Hi there. Today we're going to explore the plot of the 2008 film The Other Boleyn Girl. England, early 16th century. Young sisters Anne and Mary Boleyn play with their brother in the fields, while their parents are already planning advantageous marriages for them. Years pass, and the younger sister Mary is the first to walk down the aisle. Her brother George warmly congratulates her on this joyous day. Meanwhile, Queen Catherine of Aragon gives birth to a son. This news is immediately delivered to King Henry VIII. Mary is celebrating and dancing with her husband William Carey, whom she married for love rather than political gain. But the shrewd Anne already has her eye on Henry Percy, the heir to the wealthiest landowner in the country. From the royal court, the sisters' uncle, Thomas Howard, arrives at the Boleyn estate. He suggests to their father that they should send one of the daughters to catch the king's eye, as Henry, grieving the loss of his son, might seek comfort in the arms of a new mistress. Thomas believes Anne is the perfect candidate. She is ambitious and naturally charming. Unlike Mary, she is not interested in a simple marriage. Meanwhile, Mary prepares for her wedding night and promises to tell her sister all about it. Their father and uncle share their plan with Anne. She could help the family gain immense wealth and power. But time is running out. Soon, every noble family will be presenting their daughters to the king. Thomas assures Anne that once the king tires of her, she can easily marry a duke or a marquis. He has already arranged for Henry to visit their estate. Anne's mother is concerned that her daughter does not fully understand what she's agreeing to. The next morning, Mary tells Anne about her wedding night, saying it was over quickly and that her husband immediately fell asleep. Meanwhile, Anne confides to her sister that she plans to seduce the king himself. 2 months later, Henry VIII arrives at the Boleyn estate with his large entourage. The entire family welcomes him, and he immediately begins flirting with Anne. The next day, a hunting trip is planned. Defying etiquette, Anne mounts a horse and rides on her own. During the chase, the king falls into a ditch and is injured. He is carried back to the estate on a stretcher. To soothe the king, they send the gentle and modest Mary to him. It works. Henry becomes interested in her and asks if her husband would mind if he invited her to court. Thomas's plan worked, but with the wrong sister. After the king's departure, Mary announces that she has been appointed as a lady-in-waiting to the queen. Her husband has also been given a position at court. Anne is also summoned to court. She is furious with her sister, unable to understand how Mary managed to captivate the king in just a few minutes. The queen meets her new ladies-in-waiting. She immediately senses that Mary is not there by coincidence and forces her to sing in front of everyone. Lady Jane Parker tries to comfort Mary, assuring her that the queen actually has a kind heart. She also hints that she is interested in the sister's brother, George Boleyn. At the ball, Mary is accompanied by the servant William Stafford, who tries to console her. But just then, the king approaches her and says only one word: "Tonight." Meanwhile, William struggles to hold back tears, while Anne barely contains her anger as she helps her sister prepare for a night with the king. A shy Mary enters Henry's chambers wearing only a nightgown. The king quickly charms her with his words, convincing her that he understands what it's like to always be in the shadow of older siblings. Mary spends the night with the king, and to her surprise, she actually enjoys it. The next morning, Mary is summoned by her uncle Thomas. She tells him every detail of the night with the king. Thomas is ecstatic. Now his plans are becoming even grander. If Mary bears the king an heir, the Boleyn family could gain enormous power and influence. Meanwhile, Anne secretly marries Henry Percy, despite him being already engaged to another. Due to Anne's scheming, her plan to become a countess fails. Thomas Howard, who holds significant influence at court, sends his niece to the French court to avoid a scandal that could jeopardize their plans regarding Mary and King Henry. It was Mary who told their father about Anne's secret wedding to Henry Percy, inciting Anne's intense hatred toward her sister. Their mother advises Anne to learn the art of seduction from the ladies of the French court, so she can use it to achieve her goals in the future. Meanwhile, Mary discovers she is pregnant with the king's child. Henry is ecstatic, but the queen is deeply upset by the news. Mary's father receives the title of Earl, and her brother George is named a Viscount. The family also gains new estates and financial subsidies. However, George's joy is short-lived. It has already been decided that he will marry Jane Parker, a woman he openly dislikes. Their mother is also uneasy, realizing that royal favor is a fragile and unreliable thing. Soon after, Mary nearly loses her child. and the royal physician decides she should be isolated in her chambers. Her room becomes more like a prison. And the worst part, the king no longer visits her. Thomas realizes that their influence over the king is weakening, so he starts acting again. This time he offers the king another woman, Anne, assuring him that she has become more refined and sophisticated after her time in France. Indeed, after her return, Anne quickly catches Henry's attention. She mocks the French king while simultaneously praising Henry, calling him a real man. Her speech is sharper and wittier, and the king seems ready to forget the past offense. Upon learning of Anne's return, Mary falls into despair. George also finds himself in a difficult position. His marriage to Jane is becoming unbearable. Anne begins to employ her new tactic. She ignores the king, refuses to accept his expensive gifts, and sometimes even avoids his gaze. This infuriates Henry and only fuels his interest further. Anne even visits Mary to taunt her, saying that in France, women do not allow themselves to become so neglected. She openly disdains her sister, who now seems indifferent to Anne's interactions with the king. Anne's refusal to accept yet another gift from the king enrages him further. She claims to be offended that her sister is carrying the king's child, while he continues to shower her with gifts. The much-anticipated day of the birth finally arrives. The king waits anxiously outside the door, but is quickly distracted by Anne and asks whether he has a chance to win her favor. Anne continues to weave her web of intrigue with calculated confidence. Eventually, the king promises Anne that he will never touch Mary again, nor even speak to her. Mary gives birth to a son, a potential heir to the throne, but even this does not change the king's attitude towards her. Thomas Howard is furious. Despite Mary bearing the king's son, their family has lost influence over Henry. Anne has already persuaded Henry to send Mary and her child away to the countryside. Anne personally visits her sister to deliver the news and boldly declares that she will soon take the throne and give the king a legitimate heir. While the king rides on horseback with Anne, William Stafford helps Mary load her belongings into a carriage. He asks Anne whether he will now receive his promised reward now that Mary is leaving, but Anne is still not ready to give herself to the king. Next on Anne's list is Queen Catherine. Henry, in a fit of rage, demands that his courtiers find a way to get rid of her. The queen is sent to a convent, but for Anne, that is not enough. Now she demands that the king annul his marriage to Catherine, promising to be with him only after he makes her his wife. After all, the queen is no longer capable of bearing children. Everything seems to be going according to plan, but then Mary Talbot, Henry Percy's wife, demands a divorce, claiming that her husband's marriage to Anne was consummated. The king summons the humble Mary back to court, but only to question whether she was indeed with Percy. Among all the Boleyns, Henry trusts only her. Mary lies, claiming that she was not. She does it to reconcile with her sister Anne and begs her to remain at court. To keep things moving forward, Henry convinces the bishops to condemn his marriage to Catherine. The fact is, Catherine was married for a few months to Henry's older brother, who had died. According to church law, this technically made her Henry's sister, and thus, their marriage could be declared invalid. Catherine agrees to a trial, but only if the judge is the Pope himself. If the king annuls their marriage without the Pope's approval, he will sever ties with the Catholic Church. Catherine tries to convince her husband not to go through with it, warning him that his actions will isolate England and could lead to a civil war. But Henry has already made up his mind. The queen is forcibly taken away by guards. Henry storms into Anne's chambers. At last, Henry marries Anne Boleyn, who now becomes the Queen of England. However, the victory is bittersweet. The people gather outside the palace, shouting and calling her a witch, for they adored the kind Queen Catherine. In the hallway, Stafford rushes to Mary and informs her that he is leaving the court and will no longer serve her father. William has saved up a small sum of money, enough to buy a modest plot of land, and asks Mary to come with him, but she remains silent. Sometime later, Anne gives birth to a child, but it is a girl, whom she names Elizabeth. While Anne is carrying the child, Henry has already begun an affair with another lady-in-waiting, Jane Seymour. Anne is constantly under pressure. The only thing expected of her is to bear a son. She throws fits of jealousy at Henry. Eventually, Anne becomes pregnant again. Thomas Howard understands that if this pregnancy ends in failure, they will all lose their influence at court. Meanwhile, Jane Parker strikes a deal with Thomas. Anne is tormented by nightmares. She calls her brother George and Mary to her chambers. Anne does not tell Henry that she has lost the baby. Driven mad by despair, Anne orders her brother George to lie with her, claiming it is her last chance to give birth to an heir. Shocked, George agrees. Jane Parker learns of this. George, in his undershirt, lies beside Anne but changes his mind and says he cannot go through with it. Anne also gives up. Mary decides to flee the palace just as Jane Parker approaches the king with her accusation. In the morning, Henry accuses Anne of witchcraft and orders her arrest. George is also thrown into the dungeon. Anne stands trial. Among the judges are her uncle Thomas Howard and her former fiancé, Henry Percy, with claims that she was seduced by the devil himself. Anne states that she feels only sisterly love for George, but the court finds her guilty. George is led to the scaffold. Amidst the crowd's shouts, his head is laid upon the block. Mary arrives at the palace and begs the king to spare her sister and secretly send her into exile. The king allows Mary to say goodbye to Anne. In the prison cell, Anne asks Mary to take care of her daughter, Elizabeth. Mary promises to fulfill her sister's last wish. At Anne's execution, only the silent nobility is present. Anne holds back tears and tries to maintain her dignity. During her final speech, she speaks of Henry's generosity. At that moment, Mary receives a note. It informs her that the king is willing to show mercy, but not to Anne. The king will pardon Mary for her audacity to come before him with such a plea. Looking at Mary's face, Anne understands that her time has come. She removes her headpiece and bares her neck. Tears stream down her face. Mary returns to the castle and takes young Elizabeth from her mother. Humiliated, Thomas Boleyn dies 2 years later. Thomas Howard is soon arrested. In the future, his son, grandson, and great-grandson will all be executed for treason. Mary marries William Stafford, and the strong heir that Henry fought so desperately for was not a boy, but Anne's red-haired daughter Elizabeth, who ruled England for 45 years. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this recap, give it a like, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.